With Walpurgisnacht right around the corner, I want to tell you a little about the way the identities and egos tie back to Project Moon's other games. There's a total of 11 identities and 6 egos released so far, including the about to be released Queen of Hatred Dawn and Night of Despair Rodya. This video will just be focused on the IDs and egos, not what Walpurgisnacht itself is lore-wise, but I will provide a small introduction to it. Walpurgisnacht, translated roughly to Witching Night, is a recurring event that shows up every 3 to 4 months or so. Each time it shows up, content from Library of Ruina and Lobotomy Corporation appear, alternating which game is the focus each time. I will be covering just the content from the Lobotomy Corporation Walpurgisnachts in this video, and the Ruina content will be covered later when the next Walpurgisnacht happens. Any egos from Library of Ruina will also be covered if there is a matching Lob Corp ID. The organization for the order will be a bit mismatched, so I'll leave timestamps in the description if you want to see a specific identity or ego. Let's get going. I'd like to start with the newest identity and ego pair, Queen of Hatred Dawn. A fair disclaimer here, I'm making this video before she's actually released and I'm going off of her kit and the trailer. First off, who is the Queen of Hatred? Well, she is a Valve abnormality from Lobotomy Corporation. She is a magical girl who believes her purpose in life is to fight villainy and be a hero. While capable of holding a conversation with average people, she tends to only talk about her being a magical hero and fighting villains. She is so set in this belief that when there are no villains to fight, or it's otherwise been peaceful for a while, she'll transform into a hateful, villainous monster. She has no memory of this transformation to a villain once she recovers. She can, however, figure out that she did something bad, as is shown in her abnormality story when she transforms and kills 3 employees before waking up and reporting her actions to an emergency team as she sobs over killing them. It's a little unclear just how much of this she loses her memory of, although she is aware of this memory loss, as she says in her idle chats, "I don't remember what happened yesterday." Now that you know who Queen of Hatred is, let's go over the ego. In the Name of Love and Hate is a charge, rupture, / sinking Valve ego. Its attack animation is a continuation of the ego page of the same name from Library of Ruina, adding an explosion after the first beam attack. The corrosion sprite takes its design from the corrosion Roland experienced during the Floor of Natural Sciences realization. The mark of villainy this ego applies takes inspiration from the Justice abnormality page with the same effect, although this ego's application of that is more direct, being based on the target of the ego, not whichever enemy did the most damage last turn. The Name of the Awakening, Major Arcana Slave, references the skill, Arcana Slave, of similar design that Queen of Hatred uses in Library of Ruina. Now for the Queen of Hatred Dawn ID. She is a member of Hod's training team and wields the Queen of Hatred's set of ego gear alongside her gift, the heart-shaped barrette on her head. She also has the brooch from Fragment of the Universe. She is a charge, rupture / sinking identity that switches between positive and negative coins in a system that reflects the Queen of Hatred's transformation in Library of Ruina, using sanity instead of clash losses / wins for that transformation. Her skill 1s and skill 2s show the attitude of Queen of Hatred, with the positive ones being her normal state, and the negative ones being right before she transforms into a villain. Her skill 3s are a combination of Arcana Beats to start into a smaller version of Arcana Slave. Her passives mostly revolve around the transformation of Queen of Hatred, but the support passive, Magical Power Charging Support, gets its effects from Queen of Hatred's ego weapon that heals allies' SP or HP based on what damage type it randomly does, and from the Queen of Hatred herself, healing employees after work is completed successfully. Quick spoiler warning for Canto 7, if you haven't played through this canto, please skip ahead to this timestamp. Don Quixote's own story is very similar to Queen of Hatred in some ways, with both of them believing steadfastly in how just and righteous they are, while having another side they transform into that opposes those beliefs. I know that that's a vast simplification of Don's story and how it works, but the connection is very important to note, as it may be part of the reason her ego gear sync threshold was exceeded, as her passive states. Night of Despair Rodya is a member of Chessed's welfare team, and she wields the full set of Night of Despair's ego gear and gift called the Sword Sharpened with Tears, the gift being the black tear on her cheek. Night of Despair is a Valve abnormality from the Lobotomy Corporation. She was originally a knight that protected many people and upheld the values of a chivalric knight. After a long period of fighting to protect, she realized that nothing she wished to uphold had been under her watch. This realization threw her into a vast despair as we see her today. This despair, however, hasn't stopped her will to protect, although the despair does still lead her to hurt those she aims to protect at times. Now for the Knight of Despair Rodya identity. She has a syncing ID that swaps between positive and negative coin skills based on her sanity. The positive coin skills' names refer to how the knight would have been before she became racked with despair, while the negative coin skills' names refer to how we see the knight after despair has taken her. Furthermore, her negative skill 1 and counter get their names from the skills Fated Faith and Weathered Pride that the knight's swords use in the Library of Ruina. Most of the connections from this ID come from her, this can't be right, 5 passives? Okay. Well, let's start at the top with the Sword Sharpened with Tears. The blessing effect gained by this passive reflects the abnormality page of the same name and gets its defensive focus from this page's effect. The despair effect gained from this passive also gets its name from an abnormality page. Although its effects differ, they both have an offensive focus. Whispers of the Betrayed Knight refers to how, in the end, this abnormality was simply forgotten by those she protected, rather than the redemption she hoped to achieve. Break, Tear, and Pierce refers to the 3 skills her swords use in Library of Ruina that lead the swords to pierce the knight, although Rodya uses the swords against her enemies rather than herself. Magical Girl of Justice / Knight of Despair refers to the abnormality's 2 monikers and maintains the defensive / offensive focuses of the Blessing and Despair states. Finally, her support passive, for all those who despair, likely refers to the people who Knight of Despair originally protected. Now, something important about this ID and the previously mentioned Queen of Hatred Dawn is that both of them use abilities far closer to the abnormalities themselves, while the next identities I'll cover use abilities much closer to the ego weapons. Now that that's out of the way, let's go back to the beginning with the first Walpurgisnacht content. Introducing Regret, Faust, and Meursault. First, let's touch on Regret as a whole. Regret is the name of the ego gear extracted from the Forsaken Murderer, a tether abnormality from the Lobotomy Corporation. To summarize this abnormality's story, he was originally a death row inmate who got experimented on. After the experiments yielded a cure for something unknown, the prisoner became less violent and was released from his straitjacket. After this change, he gradually became more and more paranoid, believing his head was turning into metal and slamming it into things to check until his very skull was showing. Ultimately, the Forsaken Murderer would be correct. His head really was turning into metal, and his rage and violence was replaced by something else, a quote, deeper and more twisted maniacal abhorrence, as the LobCorp story says. Starting with Meursault's Regret ego, the name and animations reflect the ego page Regret, and its passive, Bound Wrath, reflects the abnormality page's Chained Wrath and Violence, mixing their effects to get blunt power at lower speed and a lower base with a higher potential through its coin power raising. The corrosion animation on this ego reflects more closely the abnormality itself. Now for Regret Faust. She wields Forsaken Murderer's suit, weapon, and gift, and is the captain of Malkuth's control team. Her skill 1, Contracting Straitjacket, refers to both the Forsaken Murderer's own straitjacket and the ego suit he gives. Her skill 2, Metallic Ringing, gets its name from the abnormality page sharing its name and is a 3-coin blunt skill, much like the 3-dice blunt page of the same name from its fight in Library of Ruina. Her skill 3, Unleashed Violence, could get its name from the abnormality page Violence, and likely derives its effects from the ego page Regret, being a 3-coin blunt skill with stagger raising, like Regret's 3-dice version Library of Ruina. Her defense skill Gathering Spite could refer to the Forsaken Murderer's feelings as he was experimented on, but doesn't have any concrete connection. Finally, her passives. The support passive, Repression Work, references the work type that is least successful on Forsaken Murderer. Her combat passive, Coerced Regret, could get its name from the supposed cure that was mentioned in Forsaken Murderer's story. Perhaps that cure was forcing him to feel regret for his actions. That's just my speculation though. Regardless, both passives take their effect from the abnormality's Fear passive, reducing others' power instead of their own. Lantern Dawn is a member of Hod's training team. She wields Meat Lantern's ego gear consisting of a suit, weapon, and gift, each called Lantern. She also has the horns from Void Dream and the brooch from Fragment of the Universe, both of which are ego gifts. Meat Lantern is a Teth abnormality that is shown as a fluffy white creature with a glowing green lure attached to its head. We never see its full body in Lobotomy Corporation, but we do see a little more of it in a cut content abnormality page, Ambush, where we can see it has a tail of some sort. When it breaches, it takes up a spot in a hallway and lures agents over with its lantern, where it then eats them whole. Now that we've covered Meat Lantern itself, back to Dawn. She is a tank Rupture ID that gets its main gimmick, aggro, from Meat Lantern. Her skills mostly reference the ego gift from Meat Lantern and Dawn's use of those teeth plus the weapon's teeth. Her skill 1, I shall nibble thee, skill 3, whirlwind om nom nom, and defense skill, chattering teeth, and her combat passive, om nom nom, all reference her use of the teeth to bite enemies. Her skill 2, flashing lure, and her support passive, illuma lantern, reference Meat Lantern itself. There's not any direct gameplay connections with this ID, as Meat Lantern's gear has no special abilities in LobCorp, and this abnormality was cut from Library of Ruina. Now it's time for another ID Ego pair, Magic Bullet Outis. Both the ID and Ego are taken from the He abnormality Der freischütz. They're a relatively simple abnormality on the surface level. A marksman made a deal with the devil, receiving a gun that would always hit its target, but the last bullet would puncture the head of his beloved. Upon making this contract, he went and shot everyone he loved, presumably to avoid the fated last bullet's downside. He then traveled from world to world, shooting whatever he pleased on his own whims with no reasoning. Eventually, he realized the devil he made the deal with wasn't following him anymore, because their deal had been finished. His soul had long since fallen to hell. The final bullet had pierced his own heart, leaving him as the devil we see today. Additionally, in the abnormality's flavor text, it stated, Der freischütz does not remember anything positive, such as the sparks of love or the joy of doing a good deed. He only reacts to dying things. Now that you know a bit about Der freischütz, let's start with the ID. Magic Bullet Outis is the captain of Hod's training team, wielding the full set of Der freischütz's Magic Bullet Ego gears and gift alongside the Wrist Cutter Ego gift from Bloodbath. Her archetype of burn mechanically references the two skills that inflict burn, which Angela uses when she corrodes into Der freischütz's ego in Library of Ruina. However, this primarily references the way magic bullets were acquired in the original text, bullets cast in flames surrounded by dark, hence the name Dark Flame for her unique status effect. Her skill 1 and 2, Ignition and Detonate Magic Bullet, don't reference anything in particular, but could be viewed to reflect the creation of and an alternate use for the bullets respectively. Her skill 3, Magic Bullet Fire, reflects the actual use of the gun, and its conditionals reflect a few things. First, its SP loss references Der freischütz's own loss of sanity, as well as his damage type from LobCorp. Its indiscriminate conditional references the ego weapon from LobCorp and Der freischütz's shot being able to damage enemies and allies. And its resending of Magic Bullet at 7 reflects the 7-shot cycle in LobCorp, where the 7th shot is randomly placed. Her defense skill, The Price of a Bullet, also reflects Der freischütz's loss of sanity. Her combat passive, the Marksman's Smoking Pipe, references his ego gift, the Smoking Pipe, and her support passive Request Work gets its name from Der freischütz's semi-unique Request Work in LobCorp, where you can have him shoot a bullet at a chosen point. Now for the Magic Bullet Outis ego. It's a he ego, much like Der freischütz. This ego and its minute and a half of animations references the Magic Bullet phase of Yisang's floor realization. Each of the 7 bullets this ego can use is a roughly 1-to-1 conversion of the 7 pages Angela uses during the realization, which gives each of the bullets a name instead of just a number. Magic Bullet, Inevitable Bullet, Captivating Bullet, Ruthless Bullets, Silent Bullet, Flooding Bullets, and Bullet of Despair. Each of her voice lines while she uses these in both Awakening and Corrosion references the name of the bullet she's firing. I won't go over these individually here, but you can read them all in a lovely chart on the wiki GG, which I'll link below. One last thing before we move on from Magic Bullet Outis. Her ID Uptie story is incredibly interesting, and much more closely resembles the original text Der freischütz is based on. If you have a chance, I'd very heavily recommend reading them both, and I'll link the original text in an English translation below to make it easier. Now for another ID Ego pair. Solemn, Lament, Gregor, and Yisang. Solemn Lament is the name of the Funeral of Dead Butterflies' ego. Funeral of the Dead Butterflies is a he abnormality. The story of this abnormality is a bit unclear, but from what we know, it came to Lobotomy Corporation to save the employees from the fate of being stuck with the company forever. It aims to free the employees from the cycle by killing and turning them into butterflies that then get stored in its coffin. This abnormality is acutely aware that the employees are stuck in a loop, as its flavor text states, the employees cannot return to whence they came, and have no choice but to endlessly repeat the day. Ultimately, Funeral of the Dead Butterflies ended up stuck in Lobotomy Corporation like the employees it wished to save. In its story, it stated, "They say the mourner with a huge luggage on his back had come to be a savior to all." I believe it genuinely did come to be a savior, unlike other abnormalities that are mistakenly thought to be that by employees such as Blue Star. Now that you know Funeral of the Dead Butterflies, let's start with Solemn Lament Gregor. This Ego's Awakening is based on the Ego page Solemn Lament from Library of Ruina, trading its variable stagger raising or pure damage for a sanity damage focus with a restriction based on sanity that the Ego page didn't have. It also hits random targets instead of focusing down a single one. The Corrosion references the AoE attack Funeral does in LobCorp and recreates the death effect from LobCorp where butterflies rest on their corpse. It doesn't have a direct gameplay connection, instead taking some of the HP conditionals and extra damage effects from Ruina and combining them. The passive Lament is derived from the abnormality page of the same name and similar effect from Ruina, converting the enemy's status effect condition to the enemy being at the lowest sanity point. Now for Solemn Lament Yisang. He is an agent of Netzak's safety team, wielding the full set of Solemn Lament's Ego gear and gift, which is the coffin on his back. He has a sinking ID with a unique sinking status and unique ammo mirroring the dual handguns he wields that switch between white and black damage in LobCorp. His skills effects are all based on that damage type switching, using his ammo to apply and utilize Butterfly. The skill names are all based on what Funeral does. Celebration for the Departed, Solemn Lament for the Living, Goodbye Now, a Sorrow in You, From the Coffin a Butterfly Takes Flight, each referencing how Funeral mourns the inevitable death of people and makes that death into a new freedom as a butterfly. His skill 3, when made into an acronym and reversed, spells Yisang, because of course it does. The combat passives, Fire, I Shall Fire, and I See the Dying Butterfly, get their names from two poems in the book Crow's Eye View by the actual Yisang. They are lines from Poem 9, Muzzle, and Poem 10, Butterfly, respectively. His support passive, Hand of Salvation, gets its name from the passive of the same name Solemn Lament has in Library of Ruina. However, the effects differ greatly, with Solemn Lament targeting low health characters, and Yisang converting sinking to butterfly. Last and most certainly not least, Red Eye's Penitence Ryoshu. She is the captain of the safety team and wields the Red Eye's Ego gear, the Penitence Ego weapon, and the Ego gifts of Scorched Girl and Bloodbath, the cigarette and gloves respectively. Since there are two relevant abnormalities for this ID, I won't go into as much detail on them. One Sin and Hundreds of Good Deeds is a Zayan abnormality that simply listens to confessions of employees and feeds on the evil that seeps out of them. It is, however, capable of great power when provoked by the right confession, as shown with White Knight, and in its story, where a level 3 Sin confession causes one Sin to blast light, knocking out power to the facility and taking 6 years worth of memories from the employee who'd confessed. A level 3 Sin is one that is so profound that it cannot be shared with anyone. These will be taken to the grave, as its story states. Now for Spiderbud, a Teth abnormality that protects its spider children in darkness. Spiderbud's eyes watch its children, only ever attacking someone when their children are hurt. Once Spiderbud attacks, it wraps its target in a cocoon where its children may eat the target from inside out. Beyond those two abnormalities, there's something else you need to understand from LobCorp for Red Eye's Penitence Ryoshu. Gebra is one of the Sephira in Lobotomy Corporation who in her previous life was Kali, a color fixer known as the Red Mist. During Gebra's meltdown, there is a boss fight against her as the Red Mist. During the first phase, for the first time, we see a character wield two ego weapons, Penitence and Red Eyes. This is where the main inspiration for this ID came from. Now for the actual ID. Red Eye's Penitence Ryoshu is a unique charge and bleed ID with some SP gain and tank potential. The skill names, Both of You Shut Up, SH/SF, Spiderhead/Skullface, Skullbuster, Serious Skullbuster, and Mealtime Bedtime refer to the 2 ego weapons she uses. In particular, the skill 1, Both of You Shut Up, references the fact that both of her ego weapons speak with her due to how attuned to these ego Ryoshu is. Speaking of that attunement, her passive, Ego Assimilation, builds on this, reflecting how much she understands both these ego. This understanding is incredibly important for these ego weapons, as Penitence's description states, it is useless for those who do not know justice, and the way Red Eyes' description says it works lines up pretty closely with Ryoshu's personality. Her support passive, Eat and Sleep, refers to the hunting of Spiderbud and the sanity gain of One Sin. Her unique charges get their effects from their respective abnormalities. The unique charge of Red Eyes gets its speed condition from Spiderbud's gameplay in Ruina, and its bleed from the slow death it provides to its prey. The unique charge Penitence gets its SP gain from the Penitence weapon's special ability that gains SP on hit. The shield comes from One Sin's defensive focus in Ruina. Each of the charges gets a stage name from Library of Ruina, Red Eyes Alert coming from the Abnormality page Alertness, and Penitence Confessional referring to the Abnormality page Confession. The other stages, Red Eyes Devouring and Penitence Periphery, reflect the abnormalities themselves. Spiderbud feasts on its prey, and One Sin exists outside a traditional religious setting while still being a deity-like figure. A few closing ideas on this ID. Her skill 1 animation is a combo of 2 attacks from the first phase of the Red Mist fight in Corp. Additionally, in her Uptie story, Carmen mentions how similar Ryoshu is to Callie in terms of fighting style, and alludes to them potentially being similar beyond that. One last thing about the Lobotomy Corporation Walpurgisnachts. As they've gone on, the IDs we get have become more and more attuned to their ego gear, going from Regret Faust simply using her gear, to Red Eyes Penitence Ryoshu talking with her gear, all the way to Queen of Hatred Dawn and Knight of Despair Rodya having a warning about being too close to their ego gear and their passives. Just something interesting to keep in mind for whatever we get from the next LobCorp Walpurgisnacht. Well, that's it for the Lobotomy Corporation section of Walpurgisnacht. I plan to do another video on the content from Library of Ruina when the next Walpurgisnacht comes up. I probably got some things wrong or missed some things, so if I did, please let me know in the comments. If I see any comments with information or corrections, I'll be sure to heart them so that more people see them. At least, I think that's how it works. I'm a little new to YouTube. Anyways, thank you so very much for watching. I was incredibly blown away by the attention the Sweeper video got, so if you had watched that, genuinely thank you. And a special thanks to my friends Aiden and Ella for proofreading this script. Well, good luck on your Walpurgisnacht polls, everyone. Take care.